This is one of our great union traditions where we honor somebody who's done outstanding work for the union and the college. And I'm very pleased that this year we'll be honoring, toasting and roasting Mike McGarvey. I learned a lot from Mike. He often provides the fire that's needed in a negotiating session. I think the people on the other side of the table fear no one more than Mike when he gets angry. Mike will just sometimes, frankly, he'll just lose it at the table sometimes. And that's very effective. I, of course, am always completely calm. The MC for our festivities this evening will be my predecessor in the job, Mike Frank, and I'd like to call Mike up now.
Some of you already know that Michael hates it when you call him Mikey. Well, let me say this about Mikey. There's no middle ground with Mikey. You either hate him or detest him. This is a rather unusual event in my estimation because this is the first time I have ever received a number of congratulatory telegrams for this event. They all came from people congratulating themselves that they aren't here. What can you say about a man who is admired, revered, loved by everyone? I can start by saying he's not the man we're honoring tonight. We got a lot of people here who would like to say a few words honoring Mike. As you know, Michael has been past president of the SFT, and he served for many, many, many years as the chief negotiator for the union to hammer out local agreements with the college. He has also worked with a statewide organization to bargain with the governor's office and get us the best possible agreements that we could get. He's a guy that you can count on. He's a guy who always does what he promises and, well, almost always keeps his word. We have quite a few people who would like to say a few words about Mike, and I'd like to begin with Mike's dad. Mike's father is Richard McGarvey, and as some of you know, Dick is a retired medical doctor, and his specialized training might account for some of Michael's particular skills with his hands. Dick is a gynecologist, and I'm going to take the high road on that one. Please welcome Dr. Richard McGarvey.
Well, I'm up here tonight because we thought that someone from Michael's family should say a few words on this occasion, and we weren't sure whether we'd hear from his brother in Australia. Michael was born and raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and has always been as Mike has alluded to, a happy character. Even as a baby in the crib, and he's lying there looking at his mobile of flying birds, he would be smiling when people came by to admire him, and he'd appreciate their good judgment. He always had a knack for making friends, and although his best friend was his older brother as they were growing up. Michael tolerated inactivity and boredom not at all, and if we were on a long automobile trip, he and Ricky in the back seat, he might just take a punch at Ricky for a little action, and full well knowing that he was going to pay for that in spades. He had a variety of interests, however, and even before he started grade school, he was unbeatable at game concentration. He used to frustrate me. And he was interested in magic tricks about the first few years in grade school, and was really developed quite a sleight of hand, and used to put on shows for the kids on the street. From this he progressed to ventriloquism, and had this Charlie McCarthy look-alike dummy, Danny O'Day. And he was really, and still is, very good at throwing his voice. And his younger sister, Megan, 7 years younger, really believed that this dummy could talk. So that every morning when Michael would leave for school, Megan would find the dummy wherever he had hidden it and be dragging it around with her all day long, to the dummy's deterioration and Michael's chagrin. But his primary interest has always been art, and he was always sketching even as a youngster. And in the 5th grade, somewhere he found a piece of stone about 2 feet by a foot by 6 or 8 inches, and started chipping away with a chisel. And presently there emerged a bust that looked very much like pictures of Socrates. And he was also at that time taking courses at Carnegie Mellon in art. And when he went to high school, he came under the tutelage of a man that he's always admired, a fellow named Fred de Groot, who was a brother then and the head of the art department. And as a result, Michael won a few prizes. He also got accepted at the governor's school at Bucknell the following summer. He then went on to Teller School of Fine Arts, where he got his degree. Hi, May. And he had the good fortune to spend a year in Rome studying sculpture under John Shawn, and they're still friends today. Basically, I sometimes think of Michael as the happy warrior. He's the warrior because he loves competition, and his happiness certainly derives from his family, his lovely wife Denise, and his children Joe and May. Thank you.
We actually have quite a few people who would like to hurl some words at Mikey. Our next speaker is Gail Baldwin. There she is.
I first met Michael when I taught the library portion of his freshman seminar, and it was only my 2nd class, and I remember it as being pretty much of a disaster. I remember much about it, but I remember it was pretty bad. And Marianne had scheduled it and said, don't worry, he's a little shy, but he's a really nice guy. Everything will be just fine. Well, as I was sinking lower and lower, I'm thinking, you know, is this guy going to throw me a lifeline? He didn't say beans. The whole class, he didn't say a word. And even after it was over, I thought, you know, he might say, well, don't worry about it, it wasn't that bad, or, boy, you really stunk that up, you know, but he didn't say a word. He just turned around and left the room. So I thought, when I heard he was going to be president of our union, I thought, oh great, you know, a guy that doesn't talk, what's going to happen? Well, I couldn't have been more wrong, because Michael, you have no equal. And I'm so glad that Mike Frank and Dr. McGarvey told everybody all about the good things you've done. I don't know you as well as some people, so I couldn't tell everybody about all those things, but you always know the right thing to say. You always know the right questions to ask, and the perfect comeback to the administration. So you have always made me proud to be a member of this organization, and I wish I had just a small percentage of your energy and your passion. It seems to be never ending, and I get jealous of that sometimes. But since your service to the union is impeccable, to toast you, I point in that direction. But to roast you, I'll point towards the tennis court. And I'll categorize a couple of these descriptions. The first one falls into the category of the absent-minded professor. We found ourselves one Saturday morning, one person shy of our doubles. So we usually make phone calls, and Mike said, oh, you know, I'll give Denise a call and see if maybe she can bring Joe over. I went, okay. So we were hitting around waiting. He got off the phone and he said, Joe broke his foot. I said, what? What happened? Well, he was playing soccer. I said, well, do you think you ought to go? You know, where are they, at the hospital? He said, oh no, he broke it a couple weeks ago. I said, is he in a cast? Yeah. And you thought he was going to be able to come play tennis? Well, I forgot. The next category is, I really care about you, Gail, even though I yell at you on the court. We were playing one morning, and we could hear the rain on the roof, and then suddenly we didn't hear it anymore, and this was winter time. So I went to check, and it had gotten pretty nasty outside. It was, you know, ice and sleet and snow. But, of course, nothing stops tennis, so we kept playing until it was time to leave. I said, geez, I wonder how I should go home. And so Michael said, well, I really think you should take the Parkway. Now, we play in West Atlantic City, and I live in Ocean City. So I usually just come up Shore Road and then, you know, down the Blackford Pike. So I said that to him, and he said, well, I really don't think you should go that way. I think you should go the Parkway. And I'm thinking, well, by the time I get to the Parkway, you know, I could be halfway down Shore Road. So I said, well, you know, I think I came Shore Road. He put his hands on my shoulders and said, Gail, I don't care how you got here. Go home the Parkway. Well, when I got to Shore Road, and I should make a left to go south, I thought, you know, I'm going to be almost home by the time I go up to that Parkway. I made a left, I went down Shore Road. Sure enough, the snow was a little bit too deep, so I had to make it right. I don't really remember how I made a right, I made another left, I got home, but I never told him that I didn't follow his directions. Okay, I have just two more stories, and it refers to the infamous tennis match, so I guess I need to apologize ahead of time to Ken and Mike. But I think we all know what happened some years ago on the tennis court. And Denise and I actually played a little bit of a role in that, because she and I would play on one side against Michael and Ralph as they were practicing for this match with Ken and Mike. So we weren't scheduled to play one day, but I saw them out on the court, so I just took a walk out. And here, well, Mike was in his street shoes, his loafers or something. So we weren't scheduled to play, but Ralph was there, and I don't know, somehow, you know, we were talking about things, and Michael was running around the court. And I said, you know, you really shouldn't be wearing those shoes on the court because they're new. Now my pronoun, I was referring to, he said, no, actually these shoes are pretty old. And I was worried about the court because it was a new court. And I was afraid he was going to make marks on the court. The court was new. Okay. One more thing about that match. Denise and I were teasing them that, you know, if you guys do well, that, you know, we should get some of the credit. So sure enough, when they won that match, Ralph said, well, why don't we all go out to dinner? So we did. We went out to dinner. And I ordered my favorite, which is either chicken marsala or veal marsala. I don't remember which one it is, what the marsala. And I ate most of it, but there were so many mushrooms. I didn't eat all the mushrooms. So I left them on the corner of my plate. And I don't know, I had salad on there, rolls, you know, you get finished and you just kind of push it off to the side, you put the napkin on. And so we're almost finished and Michael looked at me and he said, Gail, are you going to eat your mushrooms? And I said, well, I don't know, there was kind of a lot of them, I guess. Oh, well, don't you want them? I said, no, I think I've had enough mushrooms. And he said, oh, well, do you mind if I eat your mushrooms? And I said, you want my mushrooms? He said, well, you said you didn't want them. I said, are you sure you want my mushrooms? They've been sitting here this whole time. Yeah, I really would like your mushrooms. I said, okay, Michael, you may have my mushrooms. He took the mushrooms, ate them. I brought him a half a pound of fresh, already cleaned mushrooms.
Mike and Denise and the kids come up to Camp Bingy, which is a wonderful, wonderful time for me because, you know, as you know, summer is a foretaste of what heaven is like. And it really is heaven there. And we were sitting around the campfire one night and I said, Denise, what attracted you to Mike? Thinking she was going to say, his Dick Tracy jaw, of course. And she didn't. She said, I looked at him and I thought he would be a good daddy. And I have thought of that frequently because that's exactly what makes Mike such a good friend, is that wonderful, wonderful nurturing ability that he has, not only for his children, but also for his friends. And Mike never sets foot on Camp Bingy, but what I give him a list and talk about how high the roof is and how tall the grass is and how the wall really needs repairing. And he does it. And I'm sure that there's everybody here who could tell you a similar story. Mike is simply one of the best men I know, and I'm proud to call him brother.
Before I dissect and pull apart and humiliate Michael, I'd like to say these words from the bottom of my heart. I spent more time than I think anyone else in this room serving with Michael on the local negotiations committee. At least 8 years, when he was largely the chief negotiator. This, of course, being one of the main functions of the union locally, to arrive at agreements with the administration over a whole variety of conditions relating to work. And I can say that he is the best chief negotiator we ever had. He is resolute, courageous, patient, humorous, angry when necessary, and principled. And that these traits aren't simply attached to the role that he plays, but are reflected in his personality and character. And Elaine Ingley, who is his successor and who is deeply apologetic that she couldn't be here tonight, echoes that view. Now, Michael served as negotiator during two presidencies, the presidency of Vera King Farris, you all remember her, and the current president, Herman Satkamp. And local negotiations under each president posed a serious problem. The problem with current negotiations, of course, is that the provost, David Carr, runs them. But I want to talk about what I think is the peak experience that display Michael's negotiating skills. The time in which he was at his very, very best. The moment when he was unsurpassed in working with the opposition. And that moment came during a very long, drawn-out set of negotiations in which the administration, under President Farris's leadership, refused for 3 years, to arrive at a new agreement about the compensation of coordinators and G conveners and others who receive extra money. And Michael finally decided that he was going to create a breakthrough, that he was going to move this along to fruition. We'd been more than patient. It was time to settle this. And so he turned to his secret weapon. And remember that he is a graphic artist. So his secret weapon turns out to be stage props that visualize the problem and proposals for the other side, so they can see what it is we want and they can see what it is that's wrong. And I was witness to all this. And in fact, this has happened over 10 years ago, 6 years ago, and I saved the satchel that Michael brought in to move the negotiations forward. And I'd like to show you what's inside. He pulled out this skeleton and he said, we're here to put meat on your bare bones proposal, right? Then he said, you'll notice this is a kind of a stacked ring toy. And he said, second, the deck is stacked against us. And it's time to disassemble your pathetic offer. So he takes the rings apart. You get the idea. Third, he puts on his baby hat. He starts crying. And he says, we want to suck your titty. Excuse me. We want more milk. And then he says, we'll no longer be babied by you. We are going to shake, rattle, and roll. And he brings out our proposal, which is a 40% across the board increase in all salaries to bring us up to par with the other state colleges. Yes. And we notice that they're beginning to crack. They're beginning to listen more carefully. They're beginning to look more pliable more pliable to an agreement. And so he pulls out his next costume. Just his aviator glasses and helmet, and he says, I'm raising the pressure. And he lets his argument soar. And he says, our proposal better fly, or these entire negotiations will crash land. He's got them on the run, and the other side agrees to the proposal, and he brings out his last item. This is supposed to be his Marilyn Monroe wig. And he says to the opposition, the figure looks outstanding. Let's celebrate. And he brings finally out a bottle of champagne, which doesn't open properly. It's supposed to be confetti. And that's the story. Thank you very much.
Paul. I used to play tennis when my knee was okay, and Michael and I played doubles on a couple of occasions over in Mill Road in that indoor court. And we were playing one time, and I was at the net, and Michael was in the back. I was on the right, Michael was on the left. And whoever was on the other side, Partee probably, lobbed one over my head. And I went scooting back, fast as my little butt could carry me, to nail it. And I went out to stroke it, and wow, I got hit in the head. Because Michael was coming over from the other side. You know Michael, determined to get the ball. And my racket went one way, my glasses went another way. You know, Stephen says that he offered his treehouse that Michael wanted for Joe at the time. And Michael came over to the Ford house to deconstruct Stephen Dunn's treehouse. And according to Stephen, now remember Stephen is technologically about as skillful as I am, which is somewhere below zero. But he says that Michael set up kind of a Rube Goldberg elaborate apparatus with ropes and pulleys, all to get the treehouse onto a truck. And then he tried to lower it down, but as he lowered it down, apparently it wasn't coming down stably, so it was teeter-tottering and moving around and off balance, and it kept on looking like it might crash to the ground. And this was in the summer, and it was 100 plus degrees out, South Jersey. And Michael kept at it, and eventually he got it done. And Stephen added to me that such determination was just awe-inspiring, but that it was a forecast of what would eventually bring Michael to finally beat Stephen at tennis, which was very hard for Stephen to fess up to. Now, just a few weeks at band rehearsal, Michael and I had an interesting repartee that reveals this ferocious quality of Michael. We were rehearsing a new section of Take the A Train, and I mentioned to Mike that there were a few bars I still needed work on, that I just didn't have. There were like 4 bars, a little section of it. And Michael's characteristic response was, Paul, you should be practicing 15 minutes every day. And I turned to him and I said, Mike, I said, that's really impossible for me. These days I need naps. And you know, nobody's ever viewed me as anything but an A-type personality. I'm not exactly known as Mr. Lazy in that regard. Michael insisted. And he said, you're simply choosing not to practice every day. You could do it. Okay, and I shrugged. And this is the Michael we've all been roasting and toasting. He's like that Michael Jordan guy, be like Mike, because what Michael was telling me was that if I was like him, I could do it. And of course, none of us can be like him. None of us. And that's the point. There's really nobody quite like Michael. And let me make it clear as I go from the roast to the toast. Without his impossible demands on all of us, but I'm speaking particularly in terms of the band, his insistence on finishing the job, his intensity, that Irish stubbornness that runs against my Jewish arrogance. I wouldn't have risen from being a lousy musician to being almost a mediocre one. Okay. And the band, well, we're just an infinitely better band, right? Everybody would agree with that because of Mike's presence, Mike's insistence.
So he'd sit on the steps, sneaking up behind you, and he'd just sit there, and you didn't know he was there. And again, you try to leave, and once you got started, you were done, and you were told to stay. And it was kind of strange that every single picture or sketch he ever did of my dad always looked like Richard Dixon. I hear he's gotten better though. In addition, from an early age, Mike also showed an avid affinity for what could only be described as the performance artworks. In these, gravity played a key role. And you could say it was his medium, and then his body was more like the paint. We grew up, as everyone knows, in Pittsburgh. It was a very snowy city, very hilly, so we did the normal things. We'd go skiing, we'd go sledding. Mike and Rick would wait till the sidewalks froze over and they'd slide their way down Bryan Avenue on their way to school, but this wasn't enough for him. He needed to go further and try to test gravity, see if he could, make it go a little harder, a little faster. So one such example, in our house on Winterton Street, we had this big 3-story house, and in the center of the house was this laundry chute. And so Michael and his buddies kind of figured out when my parents weren't home, if they took all the laundry and put it in the basement right under the chute, they'd run up to the 3rd floor and ride it down, landing on a soft little pile of laundry. So this all went fine until, maybe a year went by, maybe 2, and my mother was in the basement. Mike thinks this is a good time to scare Mom. She's never seen this trick. He always liked an audience, as you know. So, hoists himself up. It's only like a little hole. He hoists himself up, gets in, pushes off, and there he stayed. He ended up stuck in there, and every time he tried to push, he got close, like his arms got more stuck in. And finally, he had to fess up that he was in the laundry chute and screamed down for my mother, who was in the basement, looking up at him, trying to figure out where he was. And he was between the 3rd floor and the 2nd floor. And he couldn't move, and he couldn't breathe, and he asked my mom if he was going to die in there. And I'm thinking I'm getting his room, but instead, she sent me next door to get the cop, who he was like 6'5", and he grabbed his feet and pulled him out. So he went on to tell another tale. So despite this near-death setback, Michael couldn't let go of the unceasing pull of gravity. So he abandoned the hope of free falling inside the house and decided to look for opportunities for free fall outside the house. So again, this genius had to look for something soft to fall into, which was our shrubs in front of the house. And it turns out that the neighbors would start waiting for Mike to do this. They would get a drink and all sit on the front porch and Costarelli's. While we're waiting there, Mike would probably announce that he was going out. So he'd crawl out his bedroom window, which is really high. Of course, we lived on a hill because it's Pittsburgh. So he's up there just waiting on the ledge, waiting for like a crowd to gather. And when enough people were there to watch, then he'd take the dive into the bush and get back out and then run up the steps again and do it again. Eventually people get bored and go in the house and he'd stop. And, weeks and weeks of this go by until my dad noticed that our shrubs have now have a hole in them and their arms are broken. And he asked Mike about it, nothing, until I think one day he finally broke his arm and he had to fess up that he jumped out the window and into the bush. Ricky did collaborate sometimes with Mike on these adventures of gravitational surrender. In front of the bushes, going down the hill, was all this English ivy that after a year was all gone because they decided instead of the steps they should roll down the hill every single time into the street. So they also killed all of our ivy and not only the bushes and messed up the laundry chute. And lastly, both Michael and Ricky truly decided to test gravity by taking my dad's brand new Audi Fox. We had a cottage area that was at a ski slope called Hidden Valley. And Mike was bored one day, as often would happen with him, and he convinced Rick that they should drive up the outer road, go off-road, drive to the top of the ski slope, and Imperial goes like this, and then that, and then there's a lake. So they made it down and down and down and didn't hit the lake this time. Another car went in the lake, but not that one. And then they drive it back up and do it again. And again, he thought he'd escape with it until the bottom fell out of the Audi. Dad never knew what happened to that car, but it was my brother's. So, in closing, I have to say congratulations, Michael. It appears that you've finally changed your direction of motion. And perhaps you finally conquered gravity, because it appears that you're definitely on your way up.
Before I introduce the guest of honor, I'd like to introduce several other people who admire him and respect him, but since there's nobody here like that, I'm going to introduce him. Michael, you are a trusted colleague of mine. You're a trusted colleague of everyone in the room. You are a strong and able union leader, and you're a very good friend. I am delighted we're all here to honor Mike. He has made incredibly strong contributions to the SFT. It's been going on for well over a decade. And he continues to make the local strong. He continues to make all of us strong. He's out there fighting for us. I count myself lucky to know him and count him as a friend. Mike? Please. The 12th Annual Dusty Award, named after, what's his name? To a gentleman and a scholar and a truly decent fellow, Michael McGarvey.
First of all, thank all of you for coming here, and I am really incredibly touched and buoyed by all of this, the good and the bad. And this is a particular honor. Those of you that may not know this says the 12th Annual Stockton Federation of Teachers Toast and Roast Dusty Award. Michael McGarvey, gentleman and a scholar. And of course, this was started 11 years ago, I guess Ralph was saying. Those of you that do not know, the former head of the union before me was Ralph Bean, who was for many years the head and stalwart leader of the union. And he asked me, for some odd reason, to be the president of the union. And I, for some reason, agreed and became the president of the union because nobody else runs. And and no sooner had I done that, shortly later, Ralph had wrote an infamous letter, which has been the subject of many of these toast and roasts, because it affected so many within the union. But needless to say, Ralph was challenging the administration on their most recent attempt to limit sabbaticals and basically throw one last broadcast, if you will, from the ship as he was on his way out. And Ralph got in a bit of legal hot water over that incident, and we started this by having these toast and roasts for Ralph And that is why it's called the Dusty Award, because many of you may or may not know that Ralph's nickname is Dusty. And I thank you, and I really value this Dusty Award, most definitely. I am proud to be part of that and part of the successor. I'm very proud that Ralph asked me, and I'm very proud to be associated with all the people who have spoken here. Of course, my family, the members of the union that I know, and I'm very proud that everyone here tonight took the trouble to come out. And I have a response to all of the roasting, of course, that went on here that I certainly can't let go, but I need the band's help in this regard. As you know, I also want to create songs for others at these toast and roasts. And since I'm being roasted, or toasted, that I also have created one for this evening.
Why not toast all of me? Can't you see I'm no good without you? Lift your glass, songs to my ears then, sweet toasts at last, I long to hear them. Such dear praise will stay with me all my days. How can I ever say thank you? You spark the fire that beats in my heart. So go on, toast all of me. Thank you all very much. One,